Along with that article, we have one from the Wall Street Journal. Gore refuses ClimateGate questions. This was written by Noel Shepard on December 15th. United Nations security officials have once again prevented a journalist from asking attendees at the climate change conference in Copenhagen questions about the growing ClimateGate scandal. This time, the person on the receiving end of the apparently forbidden queries was Nobel laureate Al Gore. Much as when Ireland's Phelim McAleer tried to ask Stanford professor Stephen Schneider questions Thursday about the controversial email messages obtained from the British Climatic Research Unit last month, McAleer was similarly rebuffed by Gore and his entourage Monday. Not only did the former vice president completely refused to answer questions about his blatant misrepresentations of the age of the most recent email message obtained from Britain's CRU, a UN security official actually disconnected McAleer's microphone to make sure any answers would be unrecorded. As reported by Not Evil, Just Wrong Monday, in several recent interviews, the former vice president said the ClimateGate emails were sound and fury signifying nothing. The most recent one is more than 10 years old. However, the reality is that the most recent email from ClimateGate is less than 2 months old. The emails undermine the science of climate alarmism, and that is why the alarmists are so reluctant to address them, or, like Mr. Gore, they make factually incorrect statements about how relevant they are. Mr. Gore says he cares a lot about science and scientific accuracy.
You've repeatedly said the oldest ClimateGate email is 10 years old. It's actually 2 months. Will you correct the record?
Mr. Gore? We're not doing interviews right now.
Mr. Gore. Mr. Gore, will you correct the record?
We're not doing interviews right now.
Excuse me.
We're not doing interviews right now.
And this is what they did to my microphone. It seems you're not allowed to ask inconvenient questions of Al Gore. What do you think of the behaviour of Professor Phil Jones in asking colleagues to delete emails and the destruction of publicly funded data was gathered by public funds?
I don't know what he asked, what he said. I don't make comments on redacted emails presented to me by people whose values I don't trust. I would have to see the whole thing, so I cannot very well comment. What I can say is that private communications that people have between each other certainly are not public documents. And
but the university has confirmed they are accurate.
Everybody says privately. Well, now I agree. We'll make it short.
I'm going to ask you to shut that off for a second, please. Can I just see your badge? Sorry, I have a member of the press. I want to give you a question. If you don't shut that off, I'm going to take it away from you. Sorry, we are the press. I don't care. Okay, I have to shut it off. If it happens again, take it away from you, you're going out. Is that understood? Thank you very much. This is unbelievable. No, I just wanted to take your badge.
Denko Pasoka nunyi horonya ye Niminko nimanya Okamu sininanya
Along with that, we have an article from Before It's News, a really good webpage on December 11th. One-child policy outrage after Copenhagen. A suggestion to adopt China's sadistic one-child policy was discussed at Copenhagen this week. Of course, a reaction of outrage ensued. An editorial in Canada's Financial Post backed the idea without mentioning what actually happens in China. Women are kidnapped off the streets, drugged, and forced to undergo compulsory abortions. In her editorial on Tuesday, columnist Francis wrote that a planetary law such as China's one-child policy is the only way to reverse the disastrous global birth rate. Now, columnists always write crazy things. That's what they're paid to do. But what's really scary is when people who are getting paid the big bucks on TV start trying to push that kind of propaganda on the American people, like on CNN.
Question this hour: should mandatory population control be a part of the fight against global warming? A writes from Oregon, pretty extreme, Jack. However, in the near future, that's certainly a consideration that many nations must make. When food, water, and critical medical services are in short supply, fewer people makes a lot of sense. Consider the enormous drain a family of 8 has on society and the community, and yet the state and federal governments reward huge families with benefits and tax breaks. Richard writes, wow, Jack, thanks very much. Finally, someone in the media has the guts to state the obvious. Everything you said's true, but you were too gentle. It needs shouting out. The fundamentalists and others opposed to population control have had their way for too long. Sean in Belvedere, Illinois, morally, there are better ways of fighting global warming than infanticide, but sadly, this method makes more sense than carbon credits. Jay writes, absolutely. Every year we have deer hunting season with the argument that if we don't control the deer population, they'll overbreed and starve to death. Why can't these John and Kate and Octomom people see that the same biological mathematics applies to humans? On a planet of finite resources, you cannot just keep producing an ever-growing pool of consumers and still expect the whole thing will work. Paul in Toronto says, Jack, humans, like the H1N1 virus, are a virus, and if we don't get ourselves under control, Mother Earth will eventually create her own vaccine and destroy us all in order to protect herself. Sebastian in Ann Arbor, Michigan, finally, it's about time we started talking about this. As an only child, the son of an only child, and the parent of none, I say if you want more than one kid, then pay for it. A tax seems reasonable. Those who adopt would be exempt. And Sam says, this is the most ignorant question I've ever seen. All right, Sam. Maybe we'll get you next hour. If you want to read more on the subject, go to my blog, cnn.com/CaffertyFile.
Now, going along with the theme of forced abortions overseas, we also have an article on December 11th from LifeSite News titled, U.S. Senate Poised to Approve Bill Funding Forced Overseas Abortions. And in it says, the bill massively expands funding for international family planning to the tune of $648.5 million, a boost of $103 million over fiscal year 2009. With President Obama having rescinded the Mexico City policy earlier this year, Harned told LSN that pro-life advocates have grave concerns that nothing now stands in the way of that funding going to organizations involved in promoting or providing abortion overseas. The United Nations Population Fund, a UN entity notorious for its collusion in the forced abortions and sterilization of China's one-child policy, also receives $55 million total for fiscal year 2010, an extra $5 million above the previous year.